The sharp click of Sarah's heels echoed through the empty apartment as she stepped inside, clipboard in hand. Another routine property inspection, until the growl, low, guttural, warning. Sarah froze. From the shadows of the bedroom emerged a German shepherd, ribs visible beneath her coat, teeth bared in fierce protection. Sarah's heart hammered against her chest as she slowly backed toward the door. The dog advanced, hackles raised. "Easy, girl," Sarah whispered, her hand finding the doorknob. But something in the dog's eyes, desperation beyond mere aggression, made Sarah pause. The shepherd growled again, then whimpered softly, as though fighting between threat and plea. When Sarah shifted her weight, the dog darted back to the bedroom, then reappeared, eyes locked on Sarah. That's when she heard it. Tiny, mewling sounds from the dark corner. The dog wasn't just defending territory. She was protecting her babies. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Sarah Morgan hadn't planned on any complications today. At 42, her life had settled into a predictable rhythm after her divorce 5 years ago. Real estate management kept her busy enough, and her modest suburban home provided the quiet sanctuary she needed. The small garden in her backyard and her evening runs were her only indulgences these days. She hadn't always been so solitary, but life had a way of simplifying itself after loss. 2 years ago, she had lost Max, her German shepherd of 9 years, to an aggressive cancer. The empty dog bed she couldn't bring herself to remove from her living room served as a daily reminder of the companion she'd lost. Her colleagues at Premier Property Management had suggested she get another dog, but Sarah couldn't face the possibility of that pain again. Better to keep her heart protected, like the wounded animal now staring her down in this abandoned apartment. The German shepherd mother was magnificent despite her condition. Even with her ribs showing and patches of fur missing, she carried herself with dignity. Her amber eyes reflected intelligence and caution, and something Sarah recognized all too well: grief. The scars visible along her flank suggested this wasn't the first hardship the dog had endured. William Parker owned this property and 5 others in the neighborhood. At 65, the widower had grown increasingly difficult to work with. His focus narrowed entirely on profit since his wife's passing 3 years ago. No pets, no exceptions was his mantra. Regardless of what the actual lease said, if he discovered these dogs, Sarah knew exactly what would happen. Rebecca Taylor, the tenant who had apparently abandoned the apartment and its canine occupants, had always paid her rent on time. Nothing in her rental application had suggested she would be irresponsible enough to leave animals behind. Sarah made a mental note to pull her file when she returned to the office. James Wilson would be waiting for her check-in call. Her colleague of 7 years was the closest thing she had to a friend these days. James would tell her to call animal control and move on. Mark Davis, her boss, would say the same, but with more emphasis on the move on part. But as Sarah stood in that doorway, watching the mother dog retreat to check on her puppies, she knew her life's carefully maintained simplicity was about to become very complicated indeed. Sarah took a deep breath and slowly closed the apartment door behind her. She wasn't leaving, not yet. The mother dog watched from the bedroom doorway, her posture rigid with distrust, but no longer actively threatening. Sarah's mind raced through her options. Animal control would be the proper procedure, but she knew the overcrowded shelters in this county. A mother with newborn puppies would face uncertain odds. "I'm not going to hurt you," Sarah said softly, keeping her voice even. She set her clipboard on the counter and reached into her purse, extracting the granola bar she'd packed for lunch. The dog's ears perked up at the crinkle of the wrapper. Sarah broke off a piece and gently tossed it halfway between them. The dog didn't move, her eyes darting between Sarah and the food, then back to the bedroom where her puppies waited. "It's okay, I understand," Sarah whispered. "You're protecting your babies." She backed away to the far wall and slid down to sit on the floor, making herself smaller, less threatening. Time ticked by in tense silence. Finally, the dog inched forward, snatched the food, and retreated to the bedroom. Sarah released the breath she'd been holding. Her phone buzzed. James checking in. She texted back quickly, "All fine, taking longer than expected." The lie came easily. An hour passed with this careful dance, Sarah offering food, the dog accepting with increasing speed, but never fully relaxing her guard. When Sarah finally gathered the courage to peek into the bedroom, her heart melted. 6 tiny puppies, eyes still closed, squirmed against their mother's belly. One, noticeably smaller than the others, struggled to find its place. "Oh," she breathed, inadvertently stepping closer. The mother growled, and Sarah quickly retreated. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The image of those puppies, especially the smallest one, haunted her. What if they didn't survive until morning? What if someone else found them first? Her professional obligations warred with something deeper, something she thought she'd buried with Max. At dawn, Sarah packed a bag with bottled water, dog food purchased on her way home the previous evening, and basic first aid supplies. She called the office and took a personal day for the first time in 3 years. When she returned to the apartment, the mother dog greeted her with less hostility. Progress. Sarah settled in again, this time with determination. She'd build trust with this dog if it took all day. By afternoon, she'd managed to sit within 6 feet of the puppies while their mother ate. The smallest one, Sarah had started thinking of it as miracle, seemed weaker today, its movements less vigorous than its siblings. "He needs help," Sarah said aloud, meeting the mother's watchful gaze. "I want to help him, and you." As if understanding, the dog whined softly. By evening, Sarah had made a crucial decision. She couldn't leave them here. She couldn't pretend she'd never seen them. The risks. To her job, to her carefully constructed emotional walls, didn't matter anymore. Tomorrow she would bring proper supplies. She would document everything, take pictures, try to find the tenant who had abandoned them. She would face whatever consequences came. As Sarah prepared to leave, promising to return, the mother dog followed her to the door, not threateningly, but watchfully. Sarah paused in the doorway. "I'm going to call you Hope," she said softly, "because that's what you're giving me right now." The dog tilted her head slightly, and for a brief moment Sarah could have sworn she understood. On the 3rd morning, Sarah arrived at the apartment with a portable dog bed, more food, and a small pet carrier, just in case. Her growing attachment to Hope and the puppies felt simultaneously natural and terrifying. She hadn't planned to let anything furry back into her heart. The sound of a car door slamming outside froze her in place. Through the window, she spotted William Parker's immaculately maintained Lincoln Town car. "Damn it," Sarah muttered, quickly gathering her supplies. But before she could hide everything, the apartment door swung open. "Miss Morgan, what exactly is going on here?" William's voice, perpetually annoyed, filled the small space. His tall frame, always impeccably dressed despite his age, blocked the doorway as his eyes narrowed at the dog supplies. Hope immediately positioned herself between the puppies and the newcomer, her growl low and threatening. "Mr. Parker, I can explain," Sarah began, but William's face was already turning an alarming shade of red. "Is that a dog in my property?" He stepped forward, and Hope's growl intensified. "That animal needs to go. Now. Call animal control immediately." Sarah moved between William and Hope. "She has puppies, Mr. Parker, very young puppies. They were abandoned by your tenant." "Not my problem," William said dismissively. "That's exactly why I have a no-pets policy. Look at the damage to the carpet. This will cost thousands." Sarah felt something snap inside her, the professional veneer she'd maintained for years cracking under the weight of unexpected compassion. "With all due respect, sir, this isn't about your carpet." Her voice was steady, surprising even herself. "This is about living creatures who were abandoned and need help." William's eyebrows shot up. "May I remind you who signs your commission checks? Your job is to protect my investment, not play animal rescue." Sarah took a deep breath. "I understand your concern about the property, but before you make any decisions, you should know that I've documented several code violations in this unit that would be of great interest to the housing authority." This was a gamble. The violations existed: faulty wiring, inadequate insulation, a water heater well past its inspection date, but pointing them out this way was unprofessional at best, borderline blackmail at worst. William's expression darkened. "Are you threatening me, Miss Morgan?" "I'm suggesting a compromise," Sarah replied. "Give me 1 week. I'll find homes for the dogs, and I'll personally cover any cleaning costs for the apartment." The standoff lasted several uncomfortable seconds before William grudgingly nodded. 5 days, not a day more, and I want that apartment spotless." He turned to leave, then added, "And Sarah, don't ever try to leverage code violations against me again if you want to keep your job." After he left, Sarah sank to the floor, adrenaline draining from her body. Hope approached cautiously and for the first time voluntarily sat near Sarah, not quite touching, but close enough that Sarah could feel her warmth. "That went well," Sarah said with a shaky laugh. Hope tilted her head, those intelligent eyes seeming to assess Sarah anew. That evening Sarah called James from her car. "You're doing what?" His voice crackled through the speaker. "Taking 'em home, all 7 of them. Sarah, think about this. Your place isn't set up for dogs, especially not puppies, and Mark will have a fit if he finds out you're antagonizing Parker." "I don't have a choice, James. The smallest one, I've been calling him Miracle, he's not doing well. I think he needs a vet." James sighed. "You named him. You're already attached." "Maybe I am," Sarah admitted. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." The line went quiet for a moment. "Need help moving them?" James finally asked. Sarah smiled for what felt like the first time in days. "Actually, yes. Tomorrow morning, I've got a plan." The next day, Sarah and James arrived with proper carriers, blankets, and a carefully thought-out strategy. Hope had grown comfortable enough with Sarah to allow gentle pets, but she still guarded her puppies fiercely. "She's gorgeous," James said, keeping his distance. "Even half-starved." Sarah nodded, approaching Hope slowly. "Hey, beautiful, we're going to take you somewhere safe today." As Sarah leaned down to stroke Hope's head, she noticed something partly hidden in the dog's matted fur. A faded collar, pushed back behind her ears. Carefully, Sarah examined it and found a small, worn metal tag. "James," she called softly, "look at this." The tag was engraved with a faded emblem, the county search and rescue logo, and underneath a name, Stella. She was a rescue dog, Sarah whispered, pieces falling into place. The dog's intelligence, her careful assessment of situations, her protectiveness. Hope, or Stella, had once been a hero. And now Sarah was determined to be hers. The morning sunlight filtered through the apartment windows as Sarah and James prepared for the delicate operation of moving Hope and her puppies. The discovery of the search and rescue tag had shifted something fundamental in Sarah's understanding of the dog's situation. This wasn't just any abandoned pet. This was a trained professional, an animal who had once worked alongside humans to save lives. "I still can't believe someone would abandon a search and rescue dog," James said, shaking his head as he arranged the carriers. "These animals are worth thousands in training alone." Sarah knelt beside Hope, who now allowed her to stroke her head gently. "I'm going to find out what happened to you," she promised quietly. "But first, we need to get you all somewhere safe." The plan was straightforward but risky. Sarah would lure Hope out to the building's small enclosed courtyard with food, while James would quickly and carefully transfer the puppies to a large cushioned carrier. Then they would reunite mother and babies in Sarah's SUV for the drive to her home. "Ready?" Sarah asked, holding a can of premium dog food she'd picked up that morning. James nodded, pulling on protective gloves, a precaution in case Hope returned unexpectedly during the puppy transfer. "As I'll ever be." Sarah led Hope into the courtyard, her heart pounding. The dog followed willingly enough, though she kept glancing back toward the apartment door. Sarah opened the can, placing it on the ground, then positioned herself between Hope and the door. The dog's hunger won out, and she began eating ravenously. Inside, James worked quickly. "Hey, little ones," he whispered, carefully lifting the first puppy. 5 of them were relatively robust despite their situation, squirming, eyes now open, making small whimpering sounds as they were moved. But Miracle, the runt, lay ominously still. James's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the tiny pup, relieved to feel a faint heartbeat. Hope finished eating in minutes, immediately turning toward the apartment. Sarah blocked her path. "Not yet, girl, just a little longer." Hope growled low in her throat, anxiety building visibly. Her body tensed, ready to push past Sarah if necessary. Sarah's phone vibrated with James's text. "All secure. Miracle. Doesn't look good." "Okay, Hope, let's go see your babies," Sarah said, opening the courtyard gate. Hope bolted past her, charging back toward the apartment. Sarah ran after her, heart in her throat. When Hope discovered her puppies missing, the anguished howl she released cut through Sarah like a physical pain. The dog frantically searched the empty space where her puppies had been, circling and pawing at the blankets. "They're safe," Sarah said desperately. "Your babies are safe. Come with me." Hope's eyes locked on Sarah, and for a terrifying moment Sarah thought the dog might attack. Instead, Hope rushed to the door, scratching frantically. Sarah opened it, and Hope tore down the hallway, following the scent trail to the building's exit and straight to Sarah's SUV, where James waited. Once reunited with her puppies in the back of the vehicle, Hope meticulously counted them, nudging each one, lingering longest over Miracle. She curled protectively around them all, but kept a watchful eye on her human rescuers. "That went better than expected," James breathed, leaning against the car. "We're not home yet," Sarah reminded him, still shaken by Hope's reaction. "And I'm worried about Miracle." The drive to Sarah's house was tense. Every stop sign or traffic light had Hope shifting anxiously in the back. Sarah kept the windows cracked despite the spring chill, knowing the fresh air might help keep the dog calm. When they finally arrived, another challenge awaited, introducing Hope to a new environment while ensuring the safety of her puppies. Sarah had prepared her spare bedroom, covering the floor with waterproof pads and soft blankets, creating a secure den-like space in the corner. Getting Hope inside went surprisingly smoothly. The dog seemed to understand that she was being offered shelter. Once in the bedroom, she immediately began rearranging the blankets to her satisfaction, creating a nest for her puppies, who James carefully transferred from the carrier. "I should call a vet about Miracle," Sarah said, watching the smallest puppy struggle to nurse. "I know someone," James offered. "Amy Winters. She does house calls, and she's good with sensitive situations." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Sensitive?" "She won't ask too many questions about where they came from," James clarified. "She volunteers at rescue groups. I'll call her." While James made the call, Sarah's phone rang. Mark Davis, her boss. She stepped into the hallway to answer. "Sarah, William Parker just called me," Mark began without preamble. "Something about you rescuing dogs from one of his properties? Please tell me this is a misunderstanding." Sarah closed her eyes, leaning against the wall. "It's complicated, Mark." "Uncomplicated. We're a property management company, not an animal shelter. If there were abandoned animals, you call animal control. That's the protocol." "They would have euthanized them," Sarah said quietly. "The mother is a former search and rescue dog, and the puppies are just days old." "That's unfortunate, but not your problem to solve," Mark replied, his frustration evident. "You've put the company in a difficult position with Parker. He's threatening to take his properties elsewhere." "I'll fix it," Sarah promised. I just need a few days. The apartment will be professionally cleaned. Parker won't lose a penny. This isn't just about money, Sarah. It's about professionalism. You can't get emotionally involved with every situation you encounter in this job." The words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. Sarah had maintained professional distance for years, from clients, from properties, from complications, until now. "I understand," she said finally, "but I'm asking for your trust on this one. I've never taken a personal day in 3 years until yesterday. I've never asked for special consideration." Mark was silent for a long moment. 3 days, Sarah. Clean up the apartment, find homes for those dogs, and smooth things over with Parker. After that, we're back to business as usual. Understood?" "Understood. Thank you, Mark." When she returned to the bedroom, James was ending his call with Amy. "She can come tomorrow morning," he reported. "I told her it's urgent, but she's at an emergency case right now." Sarah nodded, her attention drawn to Hope, who was gently nudging Miracle toward her belly. The puppy seemed too weak to latch properly. "He might not make it through the night," she whispered. "Don't think like that," James said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They've survived this long. Hope is a good mother." "Hope," Sarah repeated, a faint smile touching her lips. "I forgot I named her that before I knew about her past. Stella was her official name, apparently." "Hope suits her better, I think," James said. "New beginnings and all that." After James left, Sarah settled into a routine of checking on the dogs every hour. She researched puppy formula online and managed to coax Miracle to drink a small amount from a syringe. Hope watched every movement carefully, but allowed the intervention, seeming to understand that Sarah was trying to help. As evening fell, Sarah brought her laptop into the room, settling on the floor at a respectful distance from the dog family. She began searching for information on missing search and rescue dogs, scrolling through pages of reports. "Let's see if we can find out who you really are," she murmured. Most of the reports were too old or from other states. But then, on a local county sheriff's department page from 3 years ago, she found a brief mention. "Canine unit mourns the loss of S&R dog Stella, lost during mountain rescue operation." There was a photo, a younger, healthier Hope in a working vest, standing proudly beside a uniformed officer whose face was partially obscured. Sarah leaned closer to the screen. Something about the officer seemed familiar, but the image quality was too poor to be certain. She made a note to call the sheriff's department in the morning. Her colleagues' reactions to her impromptu dog rescue had been mixed. James was supportive, but when word spread through the office grapevine, others were less understanding. Tanya from accounting had texted, "Lost your mind? Those dogs will destroy your house." Even her neighbor had given her a concerned look when she'd arrived home with a car full of dogs. Sarah had lived carefully, methodically since her divorce. No risks, no complications, no attachments. This sudden plunge into chaos was out of character, a fact that didn't escape her own notice. As she watched Hope tending to her puppies, she wondered what Max would have thought of this situation. "He would have been jealous," she said softly to Hope. "He always wanted to be the only dog in my life." Hope's ears perked up at Sarah's voice, her amber eyes studying Sarah thoughtfully. "But I think he would have understood," Sarah continued. "He had a big heart, like you." The night passed fitfully, with Sarah dozing in short bursts on the floor. Each time she woke, she checked on Miracle, offering formula when he seemed unable to nurse. Around 3 a.m., during one such feeding, Hope did something unexpected. She gently pushed the weakest puppy directly toward Sarah, as if deliberately placing him in her care. "Are you asking for help?" Sarah whispered, stunned by the apparent trust this represented. By morning, Miracle seemed marginally stronger, though still concerning. The other puppies were thriving, becoming more active and vocal by the hour. Sarah had begun to distinguish their personalities. The largest male was always first to feed. Pushing his siblings aside, she mentally dubbed him Boss. A female with a distinctive white patch on her chest seemed unusually alert and watchful. Another female constantly sought the highest spot in the nest. Climber, a quiet male, stayed close to Hope's head. Shadow, and the fifth puppy, another female, seemed perpetually in motion, Fidget. The doorbell rang precisely at 8 a.m. Dr. Amy Winters was younger than Sarah had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with cropped dark hair and an efficient manner. She carried a large medical bag and offered a firm handshake. James explained the situation, she said, following Sarah to the bedroom. "Former rescue dog, abandoned with newborn puppies. May I?" she asked before entering the room. Sarah nodded, and they stepped in together. Hope immediately positioned herself protectively over her puppies, a low growl rumbling in her throat. "Easy, beautiful," Dr. Winters said softly, not moving closer. She set her bag down slowly and knelt, making herself smaller. "I'm here to help." Sarah was impressed by the vet's approach. "She's been allowing me to handle the puppies, but she's still protective with strangers." "As she should be," Dr. Winters replied. "Let's take it slow. Can you show me which one you're most concerned about?" Sarah carefully approached the nest, murmuring reassurances to Hope, and gently lifted Miracle. Hope tensed, but allowed it, her eyes never leaving her puppy. Dr. Winters conducted her examination where Hope could see, explaining each step. "He's definitely underweight and showing signs of failure to thrive. Could be a congenital issue or simply competition from his larger siblings." She listened to his heart, checked his reflexes, and examined his gums. "Slight dehydration, too. We'll need to supplement his feeding." She prepared a small injection. "This is a vitamin and nutrient boost. It will help stimulate his appetite." As they worked together to care for Miracle, Hope seemed to make a decision. She rose from her nest, approached Dr. Winters, and sniffed her carefully from head to toe. The vet remained perfectly still, allowing the inspection. Finally, Hope gave a small whine and returned to her other puppies. "You've been approved," Sarah said with a smile. "Highest compliment from a mother dog," Dr. Winters agreed. "She's remarkable. These tags," she added, examining the faded collar Sarah had shown her, "they're official. She was definitely a working dog. I found a mention online about a search and rescue dog named Stella who went missing 3 years ago," Sarah said. "Could this be the same dog?" Dr. Winters considered this. "The timing would work. She's probably around 5 years old, which is prime working age for these dogs. The county usually microchips their animals. I can scan her if she'll allow it." Hope did allow it, and the scanner beeped affirmatively. "Registered to the county sheriff's department," Dr. Winters confirmed, "but the registration hasn't been updated. They still think she's lost or deceased." This discovery sent a wave of emotion through Sarah. Hope wasn't just abandoned. She had been lost, had somehow survived for years, and then ended up with someone who ultimately abandoned her and her puppies. "I need to contact them," Sarah said. "Her handler might still be looking for her." Dr. Winters nodded, packing up her supplies. "I've seen handlers grieve for lost partners for years. This could be a beautiful reunion." She handed Sarah several syringes and a small bottle. "In the meantime, supplement Miracle's feeding with this every 4 hours. I'll check back in 2 days." After the vet left, Sarah sat beside Hope's nest, gently stroking her head. "You've had quite the journey, haven't you, girl? Lost from your handler, somehow surviving on your own, ending up with someone who didn't value you." She sighed. "But you're safe now, and we're going to find out who you really belong to." Hope rested her head on Sarah's knee, the first truly affectionate gesture she'd offered. In that moment, Sarah felt a wall within herself crumble a little more, making space for something she'd thought she'd never risk again. Attachment. Her phone chimed with a text from James. "How'd it go with the vet?" Sarah typed back. "Good. Miracle needs extra care but has a fighting chance. Found out Hope is definitely the missing S&R dog. Going to contact sheriff's office." James replied immediately, "Want me to come help with the puppy brigade after work?" Sarah smiled. "Yes, please, bring pizza. And maybe some earplugs. They've found their voices." As she set down her phone, she heard a car door slam outside. Peering through the window, she saw a familiar Lincoln town car. William Parker had arrived, unannounced and unwelcome. Sarah took a deep breath, gently moved Hope's head from her knee, and stood up. "Stay with your babies," she told the dog. "I'll handle this." Whatever William wanted, he would not be taking Hope and her puppies. On that Sarah was absolutely certain. Sarah squared her shoulders before opening the door, preparing for another confrontation with William Parker. The elderly landlord stood on her porch, his posture rigid with irritation, a folder clutched in one hand. "Mr. Parker," Sarah greeted him, keeping her voice professional despite her racing heart. "This is unexpected." "As was discovering you've taken animals from my property into your home," he replied coldly. "I thought we had an agreement about handling this situation." Sarah stepped outside, closing the door behind her. She wouldn't risk Hope becoming agitated by a stranger's presence. "We do have an agreement. You gave me 5 days to resolve the situation. It's only been 2. William's eyes narrowed. "And in those 2 days, have you arranged for the animals to be relocated? Have you scheduled the professional cleaning I was promised?" "I've made progress on both fronts," Sarah said, which wasn't entirely untrue. She had researched cleaning services at least. "The puppies are still very young. They need special care." "That's not my concern," William said, thrusting the folder toward her. "These are estimates for the damage to my property. The carpet will need complete replacement. The baseboards are scratched. There's evidence of urine damage to the subfloor." Sarah accepted the folder but didn't open it. "I told you I would cover the costs, Mr. Parker. I intend to honor that commitment." $8,000? William challenged, watching her face carefully. Sarah couldn't hide her shock. "That's significantly higher than I anticipated." "Perhaps you should have considered that before making promises," William said with a hint of satisfaction. "I expect payment arrangements to be made by the end of the week." Sarah's mind raced. $8,000 was nearly all of her modest savings, money she'd been carefully putting aside since her divorce, money that would now be needed for veterinary care, dog food, and supplies for 7 animals. "I'll need to see itemized quotes," she said finally. "Those numbers seem inflated." William's expression hardened. "Are you accusing me of dishonesty, Ms. Morgan?" "I'm requesting transparency," Sarah countered. "Standard procedure for any major repair." A tense silence stretched between them before William nodded curtly. "Fine. I'll have detailed quotes sent to your office. But this doesn't change the timeline. 5 days, Ms. Morgan. Then I want those animals gone and the apartment restored." After he left, Sarah leaned against the door, the folder heavy in her hands. When she finally looked inside, the estimates were indeed excessive. Premium materials and labor at peak rates. She would challenge them, but even a reasonable restoration would strain her finances severely. The sound of whimpering from the bedroom pulled her from these thoughts. Miracle needed his supplemental feeding. Financial worries would have to wait. Inside, she found Hope standing protectively over the puppies, clearly having sensed the tension from outside. "It's okay, girl," Sarah soothed. "Everything's fine." As she prepared the formula for Miracle, Sarah's phone rang. It was the county sheriff's office returning her call about the microchip. Her heart raced as she answered. "This is Deputy Collins," a professional female voice said. "I understand you've found a dog with one of our microchips." Sarah explained the situation, describing Hope and the circumstances in which she'd found her. "The tag says Stella, and she was apparently a search and rescue dog." A long pause followed. "Can you describe the dog again?" coloring, approximate age, any distinctive markings?" Sarah detailed Hope's appearance, including the scar along her flank. "Miss Morgan," Deputy Collins said, her voice now carrying an edge of excitement, "that dog matches the description of a K-9 unit member lost during a mountain rescue operation 3 years ago. Her handler, well, he took it pretty hard. He's no longer with our department, but I can get a message to him." "Please do," Sarah said, "though I should mention she recently had puppies, 6 of them. They're only about 2 weeks old." Another pause. "I'll let him know. He might want to see her right away. Would that be possible?" Sarah looked at Hope, peacefully nursing her puppies. The thought of disrupting this newfound stability troubled her, but she couldn't in good conscience keep this information from Hope's original handler. "Yes, of course," she agreed. "I'll be home all day." After ending the call, Sarah sat beside Hope, gently stroking her head. "Your old partner might be coming to see you," she told the dog softly. "I wonder if you'll remember him." The thought brought a complex mix of emotions. Sarah had grown attached to Hope with surprising speed, finding in the dog's resilience something that resonated with her own guarded heart. The possibility of losing her created an unexpected ache. James arrived as promised that evening, bearing pizza and a bag of new puppy supplies. "Thought these might help," he said, pulling out special feeding bottles designed for newborns. "And this is for you." He handed Sarah a glass of wine. "Bless you," she said fervently, accepting the glass. She filled him in on William's visit and the call from the sheriff's office. James let out a long whistle. 8,000? That's robbery." "I know. I'll fight it, but it's still going to be expensive." Sarah sipped her wine, watching as James knelt to observe the puppies. Hope now allowed him near them, though she remained watchful. "And then there's the possibility that Hope's original handler will want her back." "Would that be so bad?" James asked gently. "If it's someone who trained her, worked with her, someone who's been missing her for years?" Sarah sighed. "No, of course not. It would be right. It's just—" She trailed off, unable to articulate the growing attachment she felt. "It's just that you're falling in love with her," James finished for her. "With all of them." Sarah couldn't deny it. "I told myself after Max that I wouldn't do this again." "The pain when he died?" "Was terrible," James acknowledged. "But look what you would have missed if you'd stuck to that decision." He gestured toward the nest of puppies where Miracle was showing more energy than he had since they'd found him, squirming determinedly toward his mother's warmth. "He's fighting," Sarah said, a smile breaking through her worry. "Like his mom," James agreed. "Like someone else I know?" They spent the evening tag-teaming puppy care, with Hope gradually relaxing enough to eat dinner while they watched over her brood. When James finally left, promising to return the next day, Sarah prepared for another night of interrupted sleep. Around midnight, Miracle's whimpering woke her from a light doze on the bedroom floor. The tiny puppy was struggling more than usual, his breathing labored. Sarah quickly prepared a formula dose, but when she tried to feed him, he refused to swallow. "Come on, little fighter," she urged, a knot of fear tightening in her chest. She tried again, but the puppy seemed too weak to respond. Hope approached, nudging Sarah's hand with her nose. Her eyes filled with what Sarah could only interpret as concern. The dog then carefully picked Miracle up by the scruff and placed him directly in Sarah's lap before sitting back and watching expectantly. "Are you asking me to help him?" Sarah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. In that quiet midnight hour, with a struggling puppy in her lap and a mother dog's trust placed squarely in her hands, Sarah felt the full weight of responsibility she'd taken on. This wasn't just about providing temporary shelter. It was about fighting for this tiny life. She wrapped Miracle in a warm towel and held him close to her chest, using her body heat to warm him. "Stay with me," she murmured, gently massaging his tiny body to stimulate circulation. "Your mom needs you. I need you." Time blurred as Sarah fought her own exhaustion, speaking continuously to the fading puppy, telling him stories about Max, about her life before and after her divorce, about the loneliness she'd accepted as permanent until a fierce mother dog had growled her way into her carefully ordered existence. "I used to be brave, you know," she told Miracle, carefully administering drops of formula onto his tongue, "before life taught me that brave people get hurt. My ex-husband, Michael, he said I stopped taking chances after we lost our baby." The words, never spoken aloud before, hung in the quiet room, Hope's ears pricked forward, her gaze unwavering. 7 months pregnant, Sarah continued, her voice barely audible. "A boy. We were going to name him David. The accident wasn't anyone's fault, just one of those cruel twists of fate. Michael and I, we couldn't find our way back to each other after that. Grief took us down different paths." Miracle's breathing remained shallow, but he managed to swallow a few drops of formula. Sarah kept talking, the midnight confessional somehow easier, with only a mother dog and a struggling puppy as witnesses. "Max was my lifeline after the divorce. When he died, I decided it was safer not to love anything that could be taken away." She looked at Hope, whose intelligent eyes seemed to understand every word. "But that's not really living, is it?" Hope stretched forward to lick Sarah's hand, the one cradling her weakest puppy, and in that gesture Sarah felt a profound connection form. Two mothers, one who had lost her child and one fighting to save hers, recognizing in each other a kindred spirit. Dawn was breaking when Miracle finally showed signs of improvement, his breathing steadier, his tiny body less limp in Sarah's palm. Hope remained vigilant throughout, leaving her other puppies only to check on her runt and the human who had kept him alive through the night. Sarah's phone rang as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains. Exhausted, she answered without checking the caller ID. Morgan, this is Deputy Collins again. I've reached Hope's former handler. He's quite emotional about the news. He'd like to come see her today. Would noon work for you?" Sarah looked down at Miracle, now sleeping peacefully in her palm, and at Hope, who had finally allowed herself to doze beside her. "Yes," she agreed, her voice hoarse from talking through the night. "Noon is fine." After hanging up, Sarah carefully returned Miracle to his mother's side. Hope opened one eye, checking that her puppy was safe, then closed it again, trusting Sarah completely. "Rest," Sarah told her, gently stroking her head. "You've got a big day ahead. Someone who's missed you very much is coming to see you." As Sarah dragged herself to the shower, hoping to wash away the exhaustion of the night, her mind filled with questions. Who was this handler who had lost Hope 3 years ago? Would he want to reclaim her? What about the puppies? And how would Hope react to seeing someone from her past? She had just finished dressing when her doorbell rang, hours earlier than the scheduled noon meeting. Frowning, Sarah checked her security camera. On her porch stood a woman she'd never seen before, expansively dressed and impatient, repeatedly pressing the doorbell. Beside her loomed a tall man with a hostile stance. Sarah opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" The woman's artificially bright smile didn't reach her eyes. "Hi there, I'm Rebecca Taylor. I understand you have my dogs?" Sarah's blood ran cold at the sight of Rebecca Taylor, the tenant who had abandoned Hope and her puppies, now standing on her doorstep with an entitled smile and a demand disguised as a question. The man beside her shifted his weight impatiently, his eyes hard and calculating. "My dogs," Sarah repeated, careful to keep her voice neutral despite the anger flaring inside her. "You're referring to the German Shepherd and her newborn puppies that were abandoned in an empty apartment?" Rebecca's smile tightened. "There was a misunderstanding. I had arranged for someone to care for them while I was away, but plans fell through. I'm back now and ready to take responsibility for my pets." The lie was so transparent that Sarah almost laughed. "That's interesting, because the apartment was completely empty. No food, no water, no dog supplies of any kind. The mother was severely malnourished." The man beside Rebecca stepped forward. "Look, lady, those dogs are valuable property. German Shepherd puppies sell for thousands each. We're being nice here, but we could involve the police if necessary." Sarah stood her ground, not intimidating easily. "Please do. I'd be happy to explain to them how I found an abandoned animal in a property I manage. I have documentation, witness statements, and a veterinary report on their condition when found." Rebecca's facade cracked slightly. "Those are my dogs. I paid good money for that bitch, and I want her and the puppies back. Now." "The bitch you're referring to," Sarah said coldly, "is a former search and rescue dog named Stella. She's microchipped and registered to the county sheriff's department. Her handler has been notified and is coming to see her today." This information visibly startled Rebecca, her confident posture faltering. "You're lying." "The sheriff's office has confirmed her identity," Sarah continued. "So not only did you abandon animals, a criminal offense, but you apparently acquired a service dog through questionable means. Would you like to explain that to the police as well?" Rebecca exchanged a worried glance with her companion. "Jeff, she's bluffing." The man grabbed Rebecca's arm. "We're leaving. This isn't over," he warned Sarah, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Those puppies are worth a lot of money. You'd be smart to forget we came by." As they retreated to their car, Sarah quickly snapped photos of them and their license plate with her phone. Once they were gone, she locked the door and leaned against it, her hands shaking with a mixture of anger and delayed fear. The confrontation had awakened protective instincts she hadn't known she possessed. From the bedroom, she heard Hope's anxious whine. The dog had sensed the tension even from another room. Sarah hurried back to reassure her. "It's okay, girl. They're gone," she soothed, kneeling beside the nest. Hope was standing protectively over her puppies, clearly agitated. The dog approached Sarah and pressed against her leg, seeking reassurance. Sarah sat on the floor, allowing Hope to lean into her. "I won't let them take you," she promised, wrapping an arm around the dog's shoulders. "Any of you." She called James immediately, filling him in on the unexpected visit. "They threatened me, James. Implied they'd come back." "I'm coming over," he said without hesitation. "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I wanted to contact the sheriff's office first, since they're already involved with Hope's situation." "Do it now," James insisted. "I'll be there in 20. Sarah placed the call, her voice steady as she reported the confrontation. Deputy Collins took the information seriously, promising to send a patrol car to her address and to expedite the meeting with Hope's former handler. True to his word, James arrived in record time, his normally easygoing expression replaced with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Sarah assured him, though the tremor in her hands betrayed her lingering anxiety. "Just angry. The audacity of her to abandon Hope and the puppies, then show up demanding them back like their property." "Some people view animals that way," James said grimly, "especially when money's involved. Purebred German Shepherd puppies can go for $1,500, 0 cents, to $3, 0 cents each." Sarah looked toward the bedroom where Hope was nursing her litter. "They're not merchandise. They're living beings who deserve better than someone who sees them as a payday." A police cruiser pulled up outside, and Sarah gave her statement to the responding officers. They took copies of her photos and promised increased patrols in the neighborhood, though they acknowledged there was little they could do without an explicit threat or trespassing. As the morning progressed, Sarah's anxiety about the upcoming meeting with Hope's former handler grew. What if he wanted to take Hope away immediately? What about the puppies? They were too young to be separated from their mother. and Miracle, after his precarious night, needed consistent care. At 11:30, Sarah's doorbell rang again. Her heart raced as she checked the security camera, half expecting to see Rebecca and Jeff returning. Instead, a patrol car from the county sheriff's office sat in her driveway, and Deputy Collins stood on her porch, alongside a tall man whose face Sarah couldn't clearly see. Hope, who had been dozing beside her puppies, suddenly lifted her head, her ears perked forward, her nose working as if catching a scent even through the closed doors. She rose to her feet, her tail giving an uncertain wag. "Someone's here to see you," Sarah told her softly, her heart constricting at the dog's obvious recognition. "Stay with your babies. I'll bring him to you." Sarah opened the front door, greeting Deputy Collins with a nod before turning her attention to the man beside her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, though he now stood with uncharacteristic uncertainty. His dark hair was peppered with gray at the temples, and his eyes, a startling blue, were fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made her catch her breath. "Miss Morgan," Deputy Collins began, "this is Michael Roberts, Stella's former handler." Sarah felt the world tilt sideways. "Michael Roberts?" The man's eyes widened in recognition, his composed expression cracking. "Sarah?" Deputy Collins looked between them, confusion evident. "You two know each other?" Sarah couldn't find her voice, the shock of seeing her ex-husband on her doorstep, as Hope's handler of all things, rendering her momentarily speechless. Michael recovered first. "We were married," he explained to the deputy, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "Years ago." "I had no idea," Deputy Collins said, clearly uncomfortable with the unexpected complication. "When you said you'd left the department, I assumed you'd moved away." "I transferred to city police," Michael said. "Needed a change after losing Stella." Sarah finally found her voice. "You never told me you worked with search and rescue dogs." "It was after—" Michael hesitated. "After everything. After us." The weight of their shared history hung in the air between them, the loss of their child, the disintegration of their marriage, the separate paths they'd chosen in grief. James appeared in the hallway behind Sarah, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" Sarah nodded mechanically. "James, this is Michael Roberts. Hope's, Stella's, former handler, and my ex-husband." James' eyebrows shot up, but he recovered quickly, stepping forward to shake Michael's hand. "Quite a coincidence." "Life is full of them, apparently," Michael replied, his gaze returning to Sarah. "Is she really here? Is she okay?" The raw hope in his voice broke through Sarah's shock. Whatever complicated history lay between them, his connection to Hope was genuine. She stepped back, opening the door wider. "She's in the bedroom with her puppies. She had 6 of them, though one, the smallest, had a rough night." Sarah led the way down the hall, stopping at the bedroom door. "She might be overwhelmed seeing you. It's been 3 years, and she's been through a lot." Michael nodded, emotion evident in the tight line of his jaw. "I understand. I never thought I'd see her again." Sarah opened the door slowly. Hope was standing in the middle of the room, trembling slightly, her eyes fixed on the doorway. The moment Michael stepped into view, the dog froze, her entire body rigid with attention. "Hey, Star Girl," Michael said softly, using a nickname Sarah had never heard. "Remember me?" For one breathless moment, Hope didn't move. Then, with a high-pitched whine that broke into a joyful bark, she bounded across the room and launched herself at Michael. He dropped to his knees, arms open, as the dog collided with his chest, nearly knocking him backward. Hope's entire body wiggled with excitement, her tail whipping back and forth as she licked Michael's face and hands, whining and barking in a display of recognition and joy so profound that tears sprang to Sarah's eyes. Michael buried his face in the dog's fur, his shoulders shaking with emotion. "I looked for you," he whispered. For months, I looked everywhere. Sarah and James exchanged glances, both moved by the reunion. Deputy Collins discreetly wiped her eyes. "We should give them a minute," Sarah suggested, her own voice thick with emotion. As they stepped back into the hallway, a sudden crash from outside shattered the moment. Sarah rushed to the front window just in time to see Jeff, Rebecca's intimidating companion, smashing the window of James's car parked in the driveway. "Hey!" James shouted, bolting for the front door. Before Sarah could react, the sound of breaking glass came from the back of the house. From the bedroom where Hope, her puppies, and Michael were reunited, the sound of shattering glass galvanized Sarah into action. "Michael, the puppies!" she shouted, racing back toward the bedroom. Deputy Collins was already on her radio, calling for backup as she drew her weapon. Michael had positioned himself protectively in front of Hope and her litter, his posture shifting instantly from emotional reunion to defensive stance. Hope's demeanor had transformed as well, her joyful greeting replaced by a deep, threatening growl as she faced the broken window. Rebecca Taylor was halfway through the shattered opening, her designer clothes incongruous with the jagged glass surrounding her. When she saw Deputy Collins' gun trained on her, she froze. "Don't move," the deputy ordered. "Sheriff's Department, you're breaking and entering." Rebecca's face contorted with rage. "Those are my dogs. She stole them from me." "Step back from the window and put your hands where I can see them," Deputy Collins commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Now." From the front of the house came the sounds of a scuffle, James shouting, followed by a thud and the slam of a car door. Sarah's heart raced as she realized Jeff must have overpowered James. "He's getting away," she told Deputy Collins urgently. "Backup is 2 minutes out," the deputy replied, her attention fixed on Rebecca. "They'll catch him." Rebecca slowly withdrew from the window, but her expression remained defiant. "You have no right to keep my property. Those puppies are registered to me." "Registered?" Michael's voice was cold. "Show me the paperwork." "I don't have to show you anything," Rebecca spat. "Who are you anyway?" "I'm the legal owner of the dog you claim is yours," Michael replied. "The one you abandoned starving and pregnant in an empty apartment." Hope punctuated his statement with a threatening bark, still positioned protectively in front of her puppies. The sound made Rebecca flinch. Outside, sirens wailed as backup arrived. Deputy Collins maintained her position, weapon trained on Rebecca, until uniformed officers appeared in the backyard to take the woman into custody. Her protests grew increasingly shrill as she was handcuffed and led away. "You'll regret this," she called over her shoulder. "Those puppies are worth thousands. You can't just take them." Once Rebecca was secured in a patrol car, Sarah rushed to check on James. He sat on the front steps, holding an ice pack to his jaw, surrounded by concerned officers. "I'm okay," he assured Sarah before she could ask. "Guy got in a lucky punch. They caught him trying to drive away." Sarah knelt beside her friend, examining the bruise forming on his face. "You need a doctor." "What I need is to know those puppies are safe," James countered. "Are they okay? Is Hope?" "They're fine," Sarah confirmed. "Michael protected them." The words felt strange in her mouth. Acknowledging her ex-husband's presence, his connection to this situation that had become so important to her. Inside, Michael was helping an officer collect evidence from the broken window while Deputy Collins took photographs. Hope had calmed enough to return to her puppies, though she remained vigilant, her eyes tracking every movement in the room. "The glass needs to be cleaned up before the puppies can move around safely," Michael was saying. "They're just starting to explore." "I'll call an emergency glass repair service," Sarah offered, stepping back into the room. The domestic normality of discussing home repairs with her ex-husband struck her as surreal after years of silence between them. Deputy Collins approached Sarah once the initial evidence collection was complete. "Miss Morgan, We've received confirmation that the two suspects were operating an illegal breeding operation. Rebecca Taylor has been on our radar for some time, though we never had enough evidence to move on her." "What will happen to them?" Sarah asked. "They'll face multiple charges: animal cruelty, breaking and entering, assault in Jeff's case, and possibly theft of a service animal once we determine how they acquired Stella." The deputy glanced at Michael. "Your recovery of Stella, or Hope as you've been calling her, has actually helped us break a case we've been working on for months." As the law enforcement activity gradually subsided, Sarah found herself in her kitchen with Michael, James, and Deputy Collins, the four of them drinking coffee while officers finished their work. The puppies had been moved to the living room, safely away from the glass and the activity in the bedroom. "So you two were married," James said, breaking an awkward silence. "And now you've both ended up caring for the same dog. That's quite a coincidence." Michael nodded, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "Life has a strange way of circling back sometimes." Deputy Collins cleared her throat. "I should get back to the station, file my report." She stood, thanking Sarah for the coffee. "An officer will remain on site until your window is repaired, just as a precaution." After she left, the three of them sat in uncomfortable silence. "I should probably go, too," James finally said, wincing as he stood. "Get this jaw checked out." "I'll drive you," Sarah offered immediately. "No need," James waved her off. "My neighbor's a nurse. She'll tell me if I need to go to the ER." He gave Sarah a meaningful look. "I think you two have a lot to catch up on anyway." Once James had left, Sarah and Michael found themselves truly alone for the first time in 5 years, apart from Hope and her puppies dozing in the living room. "I never expected to find Stella here," Michael said quietly. "With you, of all people." "I didn't know she was yours," Sarah replied. "Obviously." "You renamed her Hope." It wasn't a question, just an observation. Sarah nodded. "It seemed fitting. When I found her, she was so protective of her puppies, so fierce despite being abandoned and starved. She had hope, against all odds." Michael's expression softened. "It suits her, after everything she's been through." "How did you lose her?" Sarah asked, the question that had been burning since she'd learned of Hope's past. Michael sighed, setting down his coffee. "We were on a search and rescue operation in the mountains. A family of hikers had gone missing during a sudden storm. We found them, but on the way back down there was a rock slide." His voice grew tight with the memory. "Stella got separated from me. I heard her barking, then nothing. By the time it was safe to search, she was gone." "You thought she was dead," Sarah realized. "We searched for weeks," Michael confirmed. "I went back every weekend for months. Eventually, I had to accept that she was either dead or had found another way to survive. The parallels to their shared loss. The baby they'd never had the chance to know, the grief that had separated them, hung unspoken between them. "And now here she is," Sarah said softly, "with puppies of her own." "Life continues," Michael replied, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Even after loss." The sound of a vehicle pulling into the driveway broke the moment. The glass repair service had arrived. For the next hour, they focused on practical matters, directing the workers, checking on Hope and the puppies, cleaning up the remaining debris. When the repair was complete and they were alone again, Michael knelt beside Hope's nest in the living room. The puppies were awake now, squirming and squeaking as they nursed. "They're beautiful," he said, gently stroking Hope's head. "All of them." His gaze lingered on Miracle, noticeably smaller than his siblings. "Especially this little fighter." "He almost didn't make it last night," Sarah shared, sitting cross-legged on the floor nearby. "I stayed up with him. Hope actually handed him to me, placed him in my lap like she was asking for help." Michael smiled. She always was smart about knowing when to trust someone. He looked up at Sarah. "She trusts you completely now. I can see it." We've been through a lot in a short time, Sarah acknowledged. I can take her back, Michael said suddenly. That's what I came here prepared to do. She was my partner. I've missed her every day for 3 years. Sarah felt her heart constrict at the thought of losing Hope and the puppies, but she nodded. Of course. She's yours, legally and emotionally. But, Michael continued, the puppies are too young to be separated from her, and she's clearly bonded with you. He hesitated. Would you consider an arrangement? Until the puppies are weaned, at least. What kind of arrangement? Sarah asked cautiously. I could visit, help with the puppies. When they're old enough, we could find good homes for them. He paused. Except maybe for that little one. I think he's stolen your heart already. Sarah couldn't deny it. Miracle, she said. That's what I've been calling him. After everything he's survived. It's a good name, Michael approved. Sarah. He rarely used the shortened version of her name, and hearing it again in his voice brought back memories she'd thought long buried. What happened with us after David? I've regretted how we handled it every day since. Sarah stiffened, unprepared for this abrupt shift to their most painful shared history. Michael, we don't need to. We do, he interrupted gently, because life has thrown us back together in the strangest way, and I think, maybe, we're being given a chance to do better, to heal some old wounds. Sarah looked away, focusing on the puppies to steady herself. We fell apart. It happens. We didn't just fall apart, Michael corrected. We stopped talking. We stopped sharing our grief. We built walls and retreated behind them. He reached out, hesitantly touching her hand. I did anyway. The contact, simple as it was, sent a jolt through Sarah. She neither pulled away nor responded, caught in a whirlwind of complicated emotions. After I lost Stella, Michael continued, I finally understood what you went through when we lost the baby. The helplessness, the guilt, the endless questioning of what I could have done differently. His voice cracked slightly. I wanted to call you then, to tell you I finally understood, but it felt too late. Sarah swallowed hard against the tightness in her throat. It was too late. Maybe, Michael conceded, or maybe life has its own timeline for healing. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. The veterinarian, Dr. Winters, checking in on Miracle. Sarah explained the eventful day, including the attempted break-in and Hope's reunion with her former handler. I'm glad Miracle made it through the night, Dr. Winters said. And I'm not entirely surprised about the breeding operation. German shepherds with search and rescue training in their bloodline are especially valuable. I'd like to come check on him tomorrow, if that's all right. Of course, Sarah agreed, arranging a time for the visit. As she ended the call, she found Michael watching her with a mixture of admiration and something softer, more personal. You've done an amazing job with them, he said. Hope, Stella. She's healthy, considering everything. The puppies are thriving. That's because of you. I just did what needed to be done, Sarah demurred. That's always been your way, Michael observed. Seeing what needs to be done and doing it, no matter how difficult. The compliment, simple but sincere, warmed something in Sarah that had been cold for a very long time. Their conversation was interrupted by a notification on Sarah's phone, an email from Mark Davis, her boss. The subject line read simply, Urgent, your employment status. Sarah opened it with trepidation. The message was brief and cold. Your recent actions regarding the Parker property and the subsequent negative publicity have forced us to reconsider your position with the company. Please come to the office tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss the termination of your employment. She stared at the screen, a wave of anxiety washing over her. I'm being fired, she said aloud, the reality sinking in. Because of all this? Michael moved to read the email over her shoulder, his expression darkening. That's unjust. You were acting humanely in an emergency situation." "I was acting against company policy," Sarah corrected him, "and I knew the risks." She set down her phone, looking at Hope and her puppies. "I don't regret it, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do now." The financial reality hit her hard. No job, savings depleted by William Parker's repair demands, and 7 dogs to care for. It was overwhelming. Michael seemed to read her thoughts. "You're not alone in this," he said firmly. "Whatever happens next, with Hope, with the puppies, with your job, you're not alone." The words, so simple yet so profound after years of careful solitude, broke something loose inside Sarah. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking as the emotions of the past days, the fear, the joy, the reconnection, the loss, finally overwhelmed her careful composure. And then Michael's arms were around her, solid and familiar despite the years between them, offering comfort without expectation. Hope rose from her nest and pressed against them both, her warm presence a reminder of the unexpected bond that had brought them back into each other's lives. The morning sunlight streamed through Sarah's kitchen window, catching the silver in Michael's hair as he helped prepare breakfast. A month had passed since the dramatic day of reunion and invasion, a month of profound changes and unexpected healing. "Hope needs her medication after she eats," Sarah reminded him, though the reminder was unnecessary. Michael had developed his own careful routine with the dog, who had once been his partner and was now, in many ways, their shared responsibility. "Already measured it out," Michael confirmed, nodding toward a small pill container. "The vet says this should be her last week on antibiotics." Hope's recovery from the injury she'd sustained protecting her puppies had been slower than expected. During the confrontation with Rebecca and Jeff, the mother dog had placed herself between the intruders and her vulnerable family, suffering a deep cut from the broken glass. The wound had become infected, requiring surgery and ongoing treatment. "She's tough," Sarah said, watching as Hope supervised her puppies from her bed in the corner of the kitchen. The 6 German Shepherd pups, now 7 weeks old, tumbled over each other with boundless energy. They had grown from helpless newborns into distinct personalities. Boss, Scout, Climber, Shadow, Fidget, and Little Miracle, still smaller than his siblings, but thriving against all odds. Michael smiled, following her gaze. "Gets that from her mom." The casual comment, linking Sarah's resilience to Hope's, brought a flush to her cheeks. The past month had reawakened feelings she'd long thought dormant, though neither she nor Michael had rushed to define their rekindled connection. "The adoption event is at noon," Sarah reminded him, changing the subject. "James says everything's set up at the park." Michael nodded, a hint of melancholy crossing his features. "Hard to believe it's time already. They've grown so fast." Today marked a significant milestone in their journey. 5 of the 6 puppies would meet their carefully selected new families at a small adoption event organized through Sarah's newly established rescue organization, Hope's Second Chance. The creation of the rescue had been the unexpected silver lining to Sarah's job loss. When word spread through the community about her fight to save Hope and her puppies, helped substantially by James's social media campaign chronicling their story, support had poured in from unexpected quarters. Most surprising had been William Parker's change of heart. The elderly landlord had arrived at Sarah's door 2 weeks after the break-in, his usual stern demeanor replaced by uncomfortable hesitancy. "I'd been thinking about what happened," he'd said gruffly, "about the dogs and how you stood up for 'em when nobody else would." Sarah had braced herself for another confrontation, but instead, William had made an extraordinary offer. "My late wife, Eleanor, she loved animals, had a soft spot for strays of all kinds." His voice had softened with memory. "I've got that property on Maple Street, the old Victorian with the fenced yard. It's been sitting empty for years." He'd handed Sarah a folder containing a deed. "I'd like you to have it, for your rescue work. Eleanor would have wanted that." The property, A spacious house with a large yard needing cosmetic work but structurally sound had become the headquarters for Hope's Second Chance, with Sarah living in the upper apartment and the ground floor dedicated to rehabilitation space for rescued animals. Michael had been instrumental in the renovation, his skills as a former contractor before joining law enforcement proving invaluable. What had begun as occasional help had gradually evolved into daily presence, then into something more permanent as he started staying overnight in the guest room more often than not. The press coverage of Rebecca and Jeff's arrest had brought even more attention to Sarah's cause. The discovery of their breeding operation had led to the rescue of dozens more dogs kept in deplorable conditions, many of whom had passed through Hope's Second Chance on their way to forever homes. "Any for your thoughts," Michael said, interrupting Sarah's reflection. She smiled. "Just thinking about how much has changed, how one decision, stopping to help Hope, set all this in motion." "Some good decision can change everything," Michael agreed, his eyes conveying that he was thinking about more than just the dogs. Their relationship had evolved cautiously, both of them wary of reopening old wounds. They'd spent hours talking late into the night after the puppies were asleep, gradually dismantling the walls grief had built between them years ago. The shared care of Hope and her puppies had given them neutral ground to reestablish trust, to remember what they'd once valued in each other. "We should head out soon," Sarah said, checking the time. "The families will be eager to meet their puppies." Michael nodded, though a shadow crossed his face. "I keep telling myself this is what's best for them, but it's hard to let them go," Sarah finished for him. "I know." The decision to keep Miracle had been mutual and immediate. The runt of the litter had captured both their hearts during his fight for survival. The choice to keep Hope as well had been equally clear. The mother dog was too bonded to both of them now to consider separation. The other puppies, however, deserved families of their own. Sarah and Michael had interviewed dozens of potential adopters, finally selecting 5 households that met their exacting standards, including mandatory training classes, home visits, and a contract requiring the puppies be returned to Hope's Second Chance if the placement didn't work out. "They're going to wonderful homes," Sarah reassured Michael, resting her hand on his arm, "and we'll stay in touch with all of them." Michael covered her hand with his own. "I know it's the right thing." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "Speaking of the right thing, I've been meaning to talk to you about something." Sarah's heart quickened. "What is it?" Before he could continue, a knock at the door interrupted them. James's cheerful voice called through, "Transportation for 6 furry celebrities has arrived." Michael squeezed Sarah's hand. "Later," he promised. "After the adoption event." The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity, loading puppies and supplies into James's van, driving to the park, setting up the adoption area. Hope accompanied them, now comfortable enough in public settings to observe her puppies transition to new families. Each adoption was both joyful and bittersweet. Boss went to a family with older children and an active lifestyle suited to his bold personality. Scout joined a retired park ranger who recognized her watchful intelligence. Climber matched perfectly with a young couple who enjoyed hiking and outdoor adventures. Shadow found his home with a writer who wanted a quiet companion. Fidget bonded instantly with a marathoner seeking a running partner. As the last family departed with promises to join the upcoming reunion picnic, Sarah found herself blinking back unexpected tears. Michael stood beside her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "They'll be happy," he said softly. "I know," Sarah agreed. "It's just hard to let go," Michael finished. "Even when it's the right thing." Hope sat at their feet, watching the departing vehicles with serene acceptance. Her puppies were grown enough now to make their way in the world, just as she had done. James approached, slinging an arm around Sarah's shoulders. "Success all around," he declared, "and the donation box is overflowing. Your little rescue is becoming quite the community fixture." "Couldn't have done it without you," Sarah told him sincerely. James had been her steadfast support through everything, from the first day finding Hope to today's adoptions. "That's what friends are for," he replied with a grin. "Now, I believe I promised to take Miracle for the evening so you two could have a proper dinner out. It's about time you had a date night after all this puppy madness." Sarah and Michael exchanged surprised glances. They hadn't discussed this arrangement. "Your idea?" Sarah asked Michael. He shook his head. "James's, apparently. But I'm not opposed, if you're interested." The tentative invitation, so careful of her boundaries, touched Sarah deeply. "I'd like that," she said simply. Later, after dropping Hope and Miracle at James's apartment where they would spend the night, Sarah and Michael found themselves at an intimate restaurant downtown. Dressed in something other than puppy-proof clothing for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt both nervous and exhilarated to be sharing this formal space with Michael after so long. "To new beginnings," Michael proposed, raising his glass. Sarah clinked hers against it. "And second chances." The conversation flowed easily between them, touching on the future of the rescue organization, Michael's recent decision to retire from the police force, and their shared vision for Hope's second chance. The undercurrent of personal possibility remained largely unspoken, but increasingly palpable. Over dessert, Michael finally returned to his earlier unfinished thought. "What I wanted to tell you this morning," he began, "is that I've been offered a position with the county's new K-9 training program. They want to establish a search and rescue unit, and they'd like me to head it up." "Michael, that's perfect for you," Sarah said warmly. "Will you take it?" "I'm considering it," he replied. "But there's something else I want to consider first." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "These past weeks, working together, rebuilding our friendship, it's meant everything to me, Sarah." She squeezed his hand, her throat tightening with emotion. "To me, too." "I'm not suggesting we pick up where we left off," Michael clarified. "That wouldn't honor everything we've been through, separately and together. But I'd like to explore what might be possible now, who we are today after everything." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling simultaneously terrified and hopeful. "Are you asking me on a date, Michael Roberts? Because if so, we seem to be doing this backward." His laugh, warm and genuine, broke the tension. "I suppose I am. Better late than ever." "Much better," she agreed, her smile reflecting the lightness in her heart. They walked along the river after dinner, talking about possibilities. For the rescue, for themselves, for a future neither had anticipated when Hope entered their lives. When Michael dropped Sarah at her apartment above the rescue center, they shared a gentle, tentative kiss that held the promise of rediscovery rather than merely rekindling what was past. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of her phone chiming with a notification. Opening it sleepily, she found herself suddenly wide awake. The local news had published a feature on Hope's second chance, including photos from yesterday's adoption event and an interview with one of the adopting families. But it was the final paragraph that caught her attention. "Hope's Second Chance Rescue has received an anonymous donation of $50,000, 0 cents, to establish a medical fund for rescued animals." The donor, who wishes to remain unnamed, cited the inspiring story of Hope and her puppies as the motivation for their generosity. Sarah called Michael immediately. "Did you see the news?" "About the donation? Just reading it now," he replied, sounding as stunned as she felt. "Any idea who it could be?" "None," Sarah admitted, "but it changes everything. We can help so many more animals now." When she arrived at the rescue center an hour later, Michael was already there with Hope and Miracle, setting up the new intake area for a litter of abandoned kittens James had called about earlier. "Our mystery benefactor has perfect timing," Michael commented, showing Sarah the supplies he'd ordered. "These kittens will need specialized medical care." As they worked together preparing the space, Sarah marveled at how naturally they had fallen into this shared purpose. The rescue had given her not just a new career, but a way to transform her own pain into healing for others. And it had brought Michael back into her life in a way that honored rather than erased their difficult past. "I've been thinking," she said, watching as Hope supervised Miracle's playful exploration of the rescue center, "about names for our new medical center. What do you think of the David Roberts Memorial Fund?" Michael's hand stilled, his eyes meeting hers with profound understanding. Their son, never forgotten but rarely spoken of, honored in a way that acknowledged his brief existence, had meaning. "I think," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "that would be perfect." As if sensing the emotional weight of the moment, Hope approached, pressing herself against both their legs, a bridge between past and future. Miracle bounded over to join them, his once precarious existence now a daily reminder that sometimes, against all odds, life finds a way to continue, to heal, to thrive. Outside the window, spring sunshine illuminated the Hope's Second Chance sign that hung proudly over the entrance. Second chances, Sarah reflected, came in many forms. For abandoned animals, for relationships thought long ended, for hearts that had closed themselves against pain. The journey that had begun with a growling, protective mother dog in an empty apartment had come full circle, transforming loss into purpose, strangers into family, and endings into new beginnings. And in that transformation lay the greatest hope of all. In Sarah and Michael's journey with Hope, we see that life's most profound second chances often arrive when we least expect them. For those of us who've weathered losses, whether of loved ones, cherished pets, relationships, or dreams we once held dear, their story reminds us that our hearts never truly lose the capacity to open again. The courage to help one abandoned dog led Sarah back to purpose, connection, and ultimately healing from her deepest grief. Michael found that sometimes the path forward requires revisiting the past with newfound wisdom. Hope herself demonstrated that resilience isn't about forgetting hardship, but rather continuing to trust despite it. As we navigate our own golden years, carrying both treasured memories and painful ones, their story invites us to consider what second chances await in our own lives. Perhaps there's a passion to be rekindled, a relationship to be mended, or a purpose that calls to us still. Remember that Sarah didn't set out to create a rescue organization or reconnect with her past. She simply chose kindness in one crucial moment. Sometimes that's all it takes for life to reveal its most beautiful possibilities. It's never too late for a new beginning. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.